Good morning, Dr. Harrington, and thank you for coming over today here at WX The Rewind in downtown Atlanta to speak with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Jimmy, and you can call me George.
Well, George, as I understand, you have a very interesting topic for us today about literature, being the true unsung hero throughout our history for solving great mishaps of the time.
Well, yeah, Jimmy. It's a very interesting phenomenon that has been repeating itself for me not to notice.
Well, let's get to it.
Well, you see, Jimmy, we have always been moving towards a democratic society since long ago, and as one, it is certain that the responsibility for solving society's issues falls on the individual.
Certainly.
This means the collective subjective opinion we all bring to the matter is what's most important.
We can agree on that.
Now, we have never thought about the influence literature has on someone's subjective opinion, when clearly it has all to do with the source of information one receives.
Interesting, George. But are you then stating that written critiques about society's hardships are what ultimately leads us to overcoming them?
That's the thing. I've come to realize after thorough research that it is rather the fictional type of literature, meaning storytelling, rather than the factual one, meaning newspapers, that instigate someone to change their mind about something.
I see. And how can you prove this to be true?
I'll make it simple for you, Jimmy. If you read a direct negative critique about society's behavior today, you'll probably take a certain level of offense from it, which then leads to creating an unconscious, closed-minded approach to that specific article. You haven't fixed a thing. But contrary to that, a fictional story that indirectly complains about the same thing does seem to attract an average Joe's attention, so to speak, and influence his or her subjective opinion.
Okay, George, you certainly got me hooked.
And to prove this, let's take a look at The Cry of the Children by Elizabeth Barrett Browning.
Yeah, we have it here. Famous poem published in 1842, which clearly condemned child labor. In fact, at the time, almost 2 million children were employed, working 10 to 14 hours each day for 6 days a week.
Yeah, truly horrible. And let's first place ourselves in the correct context to rightfully analyze it. Do you mind?
No, not at all. It's the mid-1800s. There's not much innovation. There are no telephones, only newspapers and books to serve as mass communication, if we can even call it that. Another important factor to get a big enough picture is that storytelling was a huge part of the culture during the time. Stories would be passed on from generation to generation.
We have slavery, women's inability to vote, child labor, food riots and whatnot. Definitely issues were more of a personal matter to an individual compared to issues nowadays.
Wow, certainly way more of a personal matter, George.
This poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning uses fictional characters, being the children, to make the readers empathize with them for the horrible fact that they are bound to child labor, and still not arising a feeling of guilt from the readers for being a part of the same society that bounded them to it. Do you see what I mean?
So, basically a factual writing would not create a feeling of empathy, but rather mainly a feeling of guilt for the shared responsibility one has inside a society?
Precisely. That element is completely eliminated with fictional writings like this one.
It does make sense, since that same exact poem instigated change. For those who don't know, it brought about various labor reforms that were implemented in support of children to prevent child labor.
Like this one, there are many others, Jimmy, but the point is the same. Fictional literature does have a stronger impact on the reader. It succeeds to persuade.
Very interesting argument, an intriguing way of backing it up. Thank you for your valuable input on history, George.
My pleasure, Jimmy.
And with that, we conclude this week's podcast on WX, The Rewind. You know, you heard it here first, coming to you live from downtown Atlanta. See you next week.